November 12th, 1944, 06:42 hours. Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Staff Sergeant Raymond Kowalski crouched in his foxhole, watching 12 German soldiers emerge from the fog at 180 yards. The modified Browning automatic rifle in his hands weighed 20 pounds. 20-round magazine loaded, selector switch on full automatic, 4 spare magazines in his pouches. His squad of 8 men occupied foxholes behind him in a semicircular defensive perimeter. The Germans were moving fast through the trees, 2 yards per second. Kowalski calculated 90 seconds until they reached his position. 90 seconds to discover whether the illegal modification he'd made 4 nights earlier would save his squad or get them all killed. The bar in his hands looked completely standard. Walnut stock, 20-inch barrel, bipod folded beneath the muzzle. Nothing visible suggested any change. But inside the trigger group, where nobody could see without field stripping the weapon, Kowalski had removed the rate reducer mechanism. 22 minutes of unauthorized work with a bayonet and cleaning kit. The modification violated every regulation in the Army Ordnance Manual. Court-martial offense, 5 years military prison, dishonorable discharge, complete destruction of his future. But the modification also increased the weapon's cyclic rate by 200 rounds per minute, 40% more firepower, and in Hürtgen Forest, where German infantry attacked through fog at ranges measured in yards, not hundreds of yards, that 40% meant the difference between survival and death. Kowalski watched the Germans advance, counted them. 12 soldiers in loose formation, Wehrmacht infantry, experienced troops. They knew what they were doing, used trees for concealment, moved during gaps in American observation, standard counterattack doctrine. They'd done this before, probably many times, probably successfully. The Hürtgen Forest campaign had been killing Americans since September. 6 square miles of dense pine forest on the German border. Worst fighting conditions in the European theater. Trees packed so tight that visibility rarely exceeded 40 yards. German artillery turned those trees into killers. High explosive shells detonated in the canopy. Wood became shrapnel. 40-meter pines became fragmentation weapons. Soldiers died from splinters the size of bayonets. 3,200 men from the 28th Infantry Division had become casualties in 3 weeks. Some from artillery, some from small arms. Many from close-range German counterattacks that came through fog and smoke before Americans could respond effectively. The forest negated every American advantage. Air support couldn't see targets. Artillery couldn't penetrate canopy. Armor couldn't maneuver through trees. Infantry fought alone with rifles and automatic weapons designed for different warfare. The Browning automatic rifle was America's squad automatic weapon, M1918A2 model, designed in 1917, refined in 1918, standard issue since 1938, 20 pounds of walnut and steel, 30-06 Springfield ammunition, 20-round detachable magazine, gas-operated, air-cooled, selective fire between semi-automatic and full automatic. On paper, the bar could fire 550 rounds per minute. In practice, the military fire control system limited it to 350 rounds per minute in full automatic mode. The difference came from a rate reducer mechanism inside the trigger group. Small device, buffer spring and cam system, slowed the bolt carrier's cycling speed, prevented barrel overheating, conserved ammunition, ensured long-term reliability. The Army had installed rate reducers for good reasons. Doctrine from 1918 emphasized controlled automatic fire, short bursts, aimed shots, disciplined ammunition management. The doctrine assumed long-range engagements, assumed enemies attacking across open ground, assumed time to aim, time to fire controlled bursts, time to reload, time to adjust fire. Hürtgen Forest invalidated every assumption. German soldiers didn't attack across open ground. They attacked through fog at 30 yards, sometimes 20 yards, sometimes 10 yards. They came fast, came hard, came close. Firefights lasted 15 to 45 seconds. No time for controlled bursts, no time for aimed fire, no time for anything except maximum violence in minimum time. The bar's regulated cyclic rate was killing American soldiers. 62 men from the 28th Division had died in close-range German assaults over the past 3 weeks. Kowalski knew the number exactly, had seen the casualty reports, had attended the memorial services, had watched body bags loaded onto trucks. The pattern never changed. Germans attacked through fog. Americans fired their BARs in controlled bursts like doctrine demanded. 5-round bursts. Pause. 5-round bursts. Pause. Aimed fire. Controlled fire. Exactly what the manual prescribed. But controlled fire meant fewer bullets downrange. Fewer bullets meant Germans kept coming. Germans reached American positions. Americans died. Kowalski had watched 3 of those men die. Watched them fire their BRs perfectly. Watched them follow doctrine exactly. Watched them die anyway. November 4th, Private First Class Eddie Morrison, 21 years old, Philadelphia. German counterattack at dawn, 25 yards through fog. Morrison had his bar up immediately. Fired controlled bursts, 5 rounds. Pause, 5 rounds. Pause. Exactly like training, exactly like the manual. His weapon functioned perfectly. 0 malfunctions. Every round fired. But not enough rounds, not fast enough. Germans kept coming through Morrison's fire, reached his foxhole. Morrison died from bayonet wounds, bled out in 40 seconds. Kowalski had been 30 feet away, couldn't help. Too many Germans, too close, too fast. November 7th, Corporal James Chen, 23 years old, Sacramento. Another dawn attack, 30 yards. Chen fired regulation bursts from his bar. Weapon performed exactly as designed. Rate reducer functioning properly. Cyclic rate precisely 350 rounds per minute. Chen got 8 Germans in his field of fire. Killed 2, wounded 1, 5 kept coming. Chen died from a potato masher grenade. German soldier got close enough to throw it. 3 yards. Grenade landed in Chen's foxhole. Chen tried to throw it back, wasn't fast enough. The explosion killed him instantly. November 9th, Sergeant Thomas Blake, 25 years old, Detroit. Blake was Kowalski's friend, 16 months in combat together. Normandy, St. Lo, Aiken, Hürtgen. Blake knew infantry combat better than anyone in the company, knew tactics, knew weapons, knew how to survive. German squad assault came at 15 yards through morning fog. 6 soldiers. Blake had his bar ready, fired immediately. Perfect fire discipline. Controlled bursts, aimed shots. His weapon performed flawlessly, exactly as the Army wanted, exactly as doctrine prescribed. Blake killed 3 Germans, wounded 1. 2 reached his position. Blake fought hand to hand. Rifle butt, bayonet, bare hands. He was strong. He was experienced, but 2 against 1. Blake died fighting. Kowalski reached Blake's position 20 seconds after the shooting stopped. Held Blake while he bled out from knife wounds. Blake's last words were, "Gun's too goddamn slow, Ray." Blake died at 07:15 hours. Kowalski sat in Blake's foxhole until 0800. Sat with his friend's body, sat with the bar that had functioned perfectly, sat with the weapon that had fired exactly as designed and hadn't saved Blake's life. That morning, Kowalski understood something. The problem wasn't the soldiers. The problem wasn't tactics. The problem wasn't training. The problem was mechanical. The bar's rate reducer was killing American soldiers. Not through malfunction, through design, through deliberate limitation, through engineering that prioritized long-term reliability over immediate survival. The rate reducer existed for legitimate reasons. Prevented overheating, extended barrel life, reduced ammunition consumption, ensured weapons remained functional across sustained campaigns. But those reasons assumed campaigns where soldiers survived long enough to worry about barrel life. Assumed combat where ammunition, conservation mattered more than immediate firepower. Assumed warfare where controlled fire was tactically superior to maximum volume. Hürtgen Forest wasn't that warfare. Hürtgen was close-quarters slaughter. Visibility measured in yards. Engagements measured in seconds. Survival measured in rounds downrange per minute. The side that put more bullets into the other side faster won. Simple mathematics. Brutal, precise, unforgiving. Kowalski did the calculation. Standard BR with rate reducer, 150 rounds per minute maximum cyclic rate. Regulated to 350 rounds per minute in combat. In a 30-second engagement, 175 rounds maximum. In practice, maybe 120 rounds accounting for magazine changes and target acquisition. BR without rate reducer, 750 rounds per minute true mechanical cyclic rate. In a 30-second engagement, 375 rounds maximum. In practice, maybe 280 rounds accounting for magazine changes and target acquisition. Difference: 160 additional bullets, 160 more chances to hit attacking Germans, 160 more opportunities to stop an assault before it reached American positions, 160 reasons Blake might still be alive. That night, Kowalski made his decision. November 9th, 2200 hours. His foxhole. Squad asleep except for watch rotation. Kowalski sat with his bar across his knees, examined the weapon by moonlight filtered through pine trees, considered what he was about to do, considered the consequences. Court-martial, prison, dishonorable discharge, everything he'd built in 8 years of Army service destroyed. Considered the alternative. More dead soldiers, more friends bleeding out in foxholes, more memorial services, more body bags, more letters to families explaining their sons died following doctrine. The choice was obvious. Kowalski pulled his cleaning kit from his pack, pulled his bayonet, began field stripping his BAR. The air smelled like pine sap and cordite residue from earlier fighting. Temperature, -2 degrees Celsius. His fingers barely functioned in the cold. Didn't matter. The work needed doing. Inside the trigger group, the rate reducer mechanism looked simple. Buffer spring, cam linkage, connected to the trigger and bolt carrier. Slowed the carrier's return cycle. Added maybe 0.3 of a second to each firing cycle. 0.3 of a second. The time between life and death. The time between Blake living and Blake dying. Kowalski removed the rate reducer, used his bayonet as a pry bar, bent 2 retaining tabs, disconnected the cam linkage phase, pulled the mechanism free. 22 minutes of careful work, hands cramping, breath visible in cold air. Germans 200 yards away through the trees. Every sound dangerous. The modified trigger group went back into the receiver. Both pins seated properly. Weapon looked completely standard. Only internal inspection would reveal the change. Kowalski buried the rate reducer mechanism under his foxhole. Evidence destroyed. He function tested the weapon. Dry fired 3 times. Trigger pull felt slightly lighter, crisper, less resistance. Good signs. But no way to know actual performance without live fire. Would discover that in combat. Now, 4 days later, 12 Germans were advancing through fog at 160 yards. Kowalski shouldered his modified bar. His finger found the trigger, the weapon that shouldn't exist, the modification that could destroy his career, the illegal change that might save his squad. The Germans closed to 140 yards. Kowalski exhaled slowly, watched them through his sights. 12 men coming to kill Americans. His job, kill them first. With a weapon that fired 40% faster than any BAR in the United States Army. With a modification nobody had authorized. With a trigger job that would either prove Blake's death meant something or get Kowalski's entire squad killed. 120 yards. Kowalski squeezed the trigger. November 9th, 1944, 2200 hours. 3 hours after Thomas Blake died. Kowalski sat in his foxhole with Blake's last words echoing in his head. Guns too goddamn slow. The temperature had dropped to -2 degrees Celsius. Frost formed on the pine needles above him. His breath came out in white clouds. The forest was quiet except for occasional artillery rumbling in the distance. Germans lobbing shells at American positions 3 miles north. Kowalski's squad was asleep. 8 men in foxholes arranged in a defensive semicircle. Private First Class Danny Ortiz had first watch. 2 hours. Then Corporal Mike Harris. Then rotation continued through the night. Standard procedure. Always someone awake. Always someone watching the tree line where Germans came from. Kowalski wasn't sleeping. Couldn't sleep. Kept seeing Blake's face. Kept hearing those last words. Kept thinking about the bar that had functioned perfectly and hadn't saved Blake's life. The weapon lay across Kowalski's knees. 20 pounds. Cold metal. Walnut stock smooth from years of handling. Magazine removed. Chamber empty. Safe. But not effective enough. Not fast enough. Not capable of putting enough rounds downrange in the 15 seconds Blake had lived after Germans appeared. Blake had fired maybe 40 rounds. Killed 3 Germans. Wounded 1. 2 had reached his position anyway. 2 was enough. 2 had killed him. Kowalski did the mathematics. 40 rounds in 15 seconds. Rate of fire, 160 rounds per minute. Standard bar performance with rate reducer. Controlled bursts. Aimed fire. Exactly what doctrine demanded. But if the rate reducer hadn't been there, if the weapon had fired at its true mechanical cyclic rate, Blake could have put 60 rounds downrange, maybe 65. 20 to 25 additional bullets, enough to stop those last 2 Germans, enough to keep Blake alive. The rate reducer mechanism was inside the trigger group. Kowalski knew this, had field-stripped bars hundreds of times, knew every component, knew how they functioned, knew the rate reducer was a simple device. Buffer spring and cam system, connected between trigger and bolt carrier, slowed the carrier's return cycle, added delay between shots, reduced cyclic rate from 750 rounds per minute to 550. Regulation then limited that, further to 350 in combat employment. The mechanism could be removed. Wasn't welded in place, wasn't permanently installed, just held by 2 pins and connected via cam linkage. Standard field strip procedure would expose it. Standard tools could remove it. Bayonet as pry bar. Cleaning rod as punch. Wire for bypass connections. Removing it would be unauthorized, would violate regulations, would constitute willful destruction of government property, would be court-martial offense if discovered. But it would also increase the weapon's rate of fire by 200 rounds per minute. Would give Kowalski the capability Blake had needed. Would provide the firepower to stop German assaults before they reached American positions. Kowalski made his decision. Not because he was reckless, Not because he didn't understand consequences, but because 3 men had died in 6 days. Because 62 men had died in 3 weeks. Because the weapon in his hands was designed for warfare that didn't exist in Hürtgen Forest. Because regulations written in Washington didn't account for Germans attacking through fog at 10 yards. He pulled his cleaning kit from his pack, opened it. Contents: boar brush, cleaning patches, oil bottle, small screwdriver, punch rod. He pulled his bayonet from its sheath. 10 inches of steel would serve as pry bar. He pulled wire from his field telephone handset. Communication wire, thin, strong, would serve for bypass connections. Kowalski began field stripping the bar, work he'd done thousands of times. Muscle memory. Start with magazine release. Magazine already removed. Check chamber, already clear. Pull operating rod handle. Lock bolt to rear. Rotate takedown pin. Separate receiver from stock assembly. His hands were clumsy in the cold. Fingers barely responsive. He flexed them, breathed on them, tried to warm them, continued working, removed buttstock, exposed trigger group. The mechanism was there, visible. Rate reducer housing attached to trigger assembly. 2 pins held it in place. Retaining tab secured the cam linkage. Kowalski positioned his bayonet against the first retaining tab. Applied pressure. The tab was designed to prevent removal. Bent it slightly. Not enough. Applied more pressure. His hand slipped. Bayonet edge cut his thumb. Blood welled up, black in the moonlight. Kowalski wiped it on his uniform, kept working. Second attempt, more careful. Controlled pressure. The tab bent, kept bending, finally gave way. Deformed enough to clear the housing. 1 tab done, 1 remaining. Second tab. Same procedure. Bayonet positioned. Pressure applied. This tab was tighter. Wouldn't bend. Kowalski adjusted angle. Tried again. More pressure. His hand was cramping. Cold and exertion. The tab suddenly gave way. Bent flat. Clear of housing. Both tabs defeated. Now the cam linkage. Connected rate reducer to trigger mechanism. Small pin held it. Kowalski used the punch from his cleaning kit, positioned it against pin, head, tapped with bayonet pommel. Soft taps. Quiet. Germans were 200 yards away. Sound carried in forest at night. Couldn't risk noise. The pin moved. Fraction of an inch. Kowalski tapped again. Pin moved more. 3 more taps. Pin cleared housing. Fell into Kowalski's palm. He pocketed it. Cam linkage disconnected. Now the rate reducer could be removed. Kowalski gripped it. Pulled straight up. Resistance. Stuck. Years of carbon buildup in cold weather. He twisted while pulling. More resistance. Applied more force. The mechanism suddenly came free, out of the trigger housing, in Kowalski's hand. The device was simple. Buffer spring maybe 4 inches long. Cam mechanism at one end, housing around it. Total weight, maybe 4 ounces. This 4-ounce piece of metal was what had killed Blake. What had killed Morrison and Chen. What had killed 62 men. Not through malfunction, through function. Through doing exactly what it was designed to do. Kowalski set it aside. Now, the trigger group needed modification. The trigger mechanism expected the rate reducer linkage, had connection points for it. Without the linkage, trigger wouldn't function properly. Sear wouldn't engage correctly. Weapon wouldn't fire. He needed to bypass those connection points. Needed to connect trigger directly to sear mechanism. Needed to eliminate the delay the rate reducer had created. The field telephone wire would work, thin enough to thread through connection points, strong enough to handle stress, flexible enough to allow proper movement. Kowalski cut 6 inches of wire, stripped insulation from both ends. Threaded one end through the trigger connection point where rate reducer cam had attached. threaded other end through sear engagement point, created direct connection. No buffer, no delay, just trigger pull directly engaging sear. He wrapped both wire ends around their connection points, twisted them tight, tested the connection, pulled trigger, felt sear engage and release. Clean, crisp, no hesitation. Good sign. Reassembly next. Trigger group back into receiver. Both pins installed. Operating rod reinstalled. Stock reassembled. Receiver and stock joined. Takedown pin secured. The weapon looked completely standard. Nothing visible suggested any change. Only internal inspection would reveal the modification. Function test. Kowalski pulled charging handle. Bolt locked to rear, released charging handle. Bolt went forward. Pulled trigger, heard sear release. Dry fire click. Normal sound. Reset trigger. Bolt cycled. Pulled trigger again. Another clean release. Everything functioning. But true test would be under live fire, under stress, under combat conditions, with 20 rounds cycling through the action at 750 rounds per minute, with barrel heating, with gas system pressurizing, with all components under maximum stress. Total modification time, 22 minutes. Kowalski checked his watch, 22 hours. Blake had been dead for 6 hours. Morrison dead for 5 days. Chen dead for 2 days. 62 others dead over 3 weeks. All because a 4-ounce rate reducer mechanism slowed their weapon's cyclic rate by 200 rounds per minute. Kowalski looked at the rate reducer in his hand. 4 ounces of steel and springs. He could reinstall it, could reverse the modification, could restore the weapon to standard configuration, could avoid court-martial, could follow regulations, could keep his career safe, could watch more men die. He dug into the floor of his foxhole, 6 inches down, cold dirt and frozen mud, made a small hole, dropped the rate reducer mechanism into it, covered it with dirt, packed the dirt down, covered that with pine needles, evidence gone, modification irreversible without replacement parts. Now Kowalski had a weapon that didn't officially exist. A bar that fired 200 rounds per minute faster than standard. A modification that violated every regulation, but might save American lives. A choice between following orders and keeping his squad alive. The choice was obvious, had always been obvious. Regulations existed to serve soldiers. When regulations got soldiers killed, regulations were wrong. Blake understood that, had said it in different words with his dying breath. Guns too goddamn slow. Now Kowalski's gun was faster, 40% faster. Whether that was fast enough remained to be seen. He loaded a magazine, 20 rounds, seated it in the magazine well, slapped bottom to ensure seating, charged the weapon, round in chamber, selector switched to safe, modified bar ready for combat. Kowalski set it beside him in the foxhole, leaned back against frozen dirt, watched moonlight filter through pine branches. Thought about what he'd done, thought about consequences. Court-martial if discovered, military prison, dishonorable discharge, everything he'd worked for destroyed. 8 years of service. 8 years of following orders, 8 years of doing things the Army way. Ended by 22 minutes of unauthorized mechanical work. But also thought about Blake, about Morrison, about Chen, about 62 others, about men who'd followed regulations perfectly and died anyway, about men who'd trusted the Army to give them weapons that worked, about men who'd discovered too late that working weapons weren't enough when doctrine was wrong. Kowalski had been a coal miner before the war. Scranton, Pennsylvania. Started at 16. 10 years underground. New machinery, new mechanical systems. Knew when equipment worked and when it didn't. Knew when regulations made sense and when they didn't. Underground, bad regulations killed miners. Ventilation systems that didn't move enough air. Support timbers spaced too far apart. Machinery without proper guards. Regulations written by engineers who'd never been in a mine. Who didn't understand what happened when methane built up or when roof supports failed. Good miners ignored bad regulations, modified equipment, changed procedures, did what kept them alive. Sometimes management found out, sometimes miners got fired. But fired was better than dead. Unemployment was better than burial. The Army was the same. Officers wrote doctrine in comfortable headquarters. Engineers designed weapons in safe factories. They did their best, meant well. But they weren't in Hürtgen Forest, weren't watching friends die, weren't facing Germans through fog at 15 yards, didn't understand that controlled fire doctrine killed soldiers when enemy was too close for controlled fire. Kowalski understood, had watched it happen, had held Blake while he died, had attended 3 funerals in 6 days, had seen enough. So he'd modified his weapon, had made it faster, had made it capable of putting enough rounds downrange to stop close-range assaults, had violated regulations to save lives. Now, he waited. Waited for Germans to attack. Waited to discover if the modification worked. Waited to learn if 22 minutes of unauthorized mechanical work would keep his squad alive or get them all killed. November 10th and 11th passed quietly. Unusual lull in German activity. Intelligence said Germans were repositioning, bringing up reinforcements, preparing for major counterattack. Made sense. Americans were pushing deeper into forest. Germans needed to push back, would come soon, would come hard. Kowalski's squad maintained positions, routine patrols, routine watches, nobody sleeping much, everyone tense, waiting. The modified bar stayed with Kowalski constantly, never left his hands, never more than arm's reach away. Private First Class Ortiz noticed, asked about it on November 11th. "Sarge, you're cleaning that weapon every 4 hours. Something wrong with it?" Kowalski said nothing, just kept cleaning, kept checking headspace, kept running function tests, making sure modification hadn't created mechanical issues, making sure weapon would function when needed. Ortiz pressed. "Seriously, something's different. You're treating that bar like it's made of glass. What did you do to it?" Kowalski looked at him, considered how to answer, decided on truth. Sort of. "Made it better. Don't ask details. Don't want you involved if this goes wrong." Ortiz understood, didn't ask more questions. But word spread through the squad. Kowalski had modified his weapon somehow, something unauthorized, something that could get him in trouble. But squad trusted him. 8 months together. Normandy, St. Lo, Aachen, Hürtgen. Kowalski had kept them alive. If he'd done something to his weapon, had reasons. They stayed close to him, made sure they were near his position, near his bar, near whatever advantage he'd created. November 12th morning, 0600 hours. Fog rolled in, dense. Visibility dropped to 40 yards. Temperature, -4 degrees Celsius. Everyone awake, everyone watching. Fog meant Germans, always did. Germans used fog for cover, attacked at dawn, through limited visibility. Standard tactic, 0630 hours. Kowalski heard movement, soft sounds through fog, boots on frozen ground, equipment rattling, Germans trying to be quiet. Not quiet enough. He alerted squad, hand signals. Everyone weapons up, safety's off, ready, 0642 hours. Shapes emerged from fog, 180 yards distant. Kowalski counted. 12 soldiers, Wehrmacht infantry, moving fast through trees. Loose formation, professional, experienced, coming straight toward American positions. Kowalski's modified bar was loaded, 20-round magazine. 3 more magazines in pouches. 80 rounds total. Selector switch moved to full automatic. No rate reducer to slow his fire. No mechanism to limit his cyclic rate. Just trigger, bolt, and 750 rounds per minute. The Germans closed distance. 160 yards. 140 yards. Kowalski estimated 90 seconds until contact. 90 seconds until he discovered if 22 minutes of unauthorized work would save his squad. His finger found the trigger. The weapon that shouldn't exist. The modification that Blake had needed. The illegal trigger job that would either prove everything or destroy everything. 120 yards. Kowalski squeezed the trigger. Time to find out. The modified bar roared. Sound like nothing Kowalski had ever heard from the weapon before. Sharper, faster, more violent. The bolt cycled at 750 rounds per minute. 12.5 rounds per second. No rate reducer to slow it. No buffer to absorb the cycle speed. Just raw mechanical function at maximum capability. First burst, 8 rounds in 0.64 seconds, longer than the standard 5-round burst doctrine demanded. But deliberate. Kowalski walked the rounds into the German formation at 120 yards. Tracers every 5th round. He watched them arc through fog, watched them connect. 2 Germans dropped immediately. Center mass hits. 30.06 rounds at 120 yards meant instant incapacitation. 1,700 foot-pounds of energy, enough to shatter bone, rupture organs, stop men completely. The remaining 10 Germans scattered. Training took over. They dove for cover behind pine trees, used available concealment. Exactly what Kowalski wanted. Disrupted formation, broke their assault momentum, forced them defensive instead of offensive. But the real difference was the sound. The modified bar's cyclic rate was unmistakable. Faster than any bar in the American arsenal. Faster than Germans had encountered before. They'd faced bars for months, knew the weapon's rhythm, knew its rate of fire, knew the pauses between bursts. This weapon sounded wrong, sounded faster, sounded more dangerous. Kowalski felt the difference through his hands. Standard BR had a measured recoil pulse, controlled, predictable. The rate reducer created consistency in the recoil cycle. This weapon felt sharper. Each recoil impulse came faster. Less time between shots, more aggressive feedback through the stock, but controllable. Kowalski had fired thousands of rounds through bars, knew how to manage recoil, knew how to stay on target. The increased cyclic rate changed the feel, but not the fundamental technique. Shoulder into the stock, lean forward, control the weapon. Don't let it control you. He fired again. Second burst, 6 rounds, 0.48 seconds. Targeted a German behind a pine tree 30 inches in diameter. 30.06 rounds at 110 yards. The rounds punched through. Pine wasn't hardwood, wasn't dense enough to stop full-power rifle ammunition. The German fell. 3 down, 9 remaining. Third burst, 5 rounds. Targeted German attempting to flank left. Caught him moving between trees. The increased cyclic rate meant Kowalski could engage faster. Could get rounds down range before target reached cover. Standard bar would have fired slower. Target would have made it to concealment. Modified weapon denied that opportunity. German went down. 4 down, 8 remaining. First magazine empty, 18 rounds fired. Duration, 14 seconds. Kowalski dropped below foxhole rim. Muscle memory took over. Magazine release. Empty magazine dropped. Reached to magazine pouch. Pulled fresh magazine. Brought it to weapon. Seated it. Slapped bottom. Ensured seating. Charged weapon. Round in chamber. Ready. Magazine change time. 3.2 seconds. Practiced movement. Thousands of repetitions. Training and experience combined. Fast enough that Germans couldn't exploit the pause. Fast enough to maintain pressure. Rose back to firing position. Germans had moved during his reload. Now at 100 yards. Closer. Too close. Within effective assault range. If they rushed now, covered the distance fast, they could reach American positions before Kowalski could stop them all. But they weren't rushing. They were pinned. The modified BR's initial barrage had surprised them, hit them harder than expected, disrupted their attack plan. Now they were reacting instead of executing, defensive instead of offensive. Exactly what Kowalski needed. He fired again. 4th burst overall. First from 2nd magazine. 7 rounds. Engaged 2 Germans using same tree for cover, 1 behind each side. Kowalski put rounds into both positions, alternated fire. 3 rounds left side, 4 rounds right side. Both Germans fell. 6 down, 6 remaining. The Germans recognized their problem now. American automatic fire was too fast, too sustained, more intense than any BAR they'd encountered. They couldn't advance under this volume of fire, couldn't close distance, couldn't execute their assault. They tried adapting. 3 Germans began concentrated fire on Kowalski's position. Mauser rounds cracked through air, hit trees, hit dirt, hit foxhole rim. Standard suppressive fire tactic. Pin the American automatic weapon. Allow assault element to maneuver. Kowalski ducked. Let them fire. Counted 3 seconds. Rose and fired again. 5th burst. 6 rounds. Caught 1 German reloading. Perfect timing. German had Mauser bolt open. Stripper clip in hand. Not ready to shoot. Kowalski's rounds hit him before he could chamber a round. 7 down, 5 remaining. But the other 2 Germans firing at Kowalski adjusted, saw him rise, shifted aim. Rounds hit closer. 1 round impacted 6 inches from Kowalski's head. Threw dirt into his face. He dropped again. Wiped eyes, cleared vision, stayed low. His squad engaged now. 8 riflemen with M1 Garands, semi-automatic fire. 30-06, same as Kowalski's bar. 8 round on block clips. Private First Class Ortiz fired from position 15 feet to Kowalski's right. Engaged Germans attempting to flank. Methodical fire. Aimed shots. Standard infantry technique. Corporal Harris fired from left side. Same approach. Controlled semi-automatic fire. Finding targets. Eliminating threats. The squad had rehearsed this. Knew their sectors. Knew their responsibilities. Kowalski's bar provided base of fire. Riflemen covered flanks. Standard small unit tactics. 1 German fell to rifle fire. 8 down, 4 remaining. Kowalski assessed 2nd magazine. 13 rounds fired. 7 remaining. Enough for 1 more sustained burst. Then 3rd magazine change. He needed to make these rounds count. Needed to break the German assault completely, not just pin them. Break them, make them retreat. He identified targets. 4 Germans, 2 providing covering fire from 100 yards, 2 attempting to maneuver closer. The maneuvering Germans were immediate threat. Had to stop them first. Kowalski rose. Acquired 1st maneuvering German. Fired. 4 round burst. German dropped. Rose slightly higher. Acquired 2nd maneuvering German. Fired. 3 round burst. German fell. 10 down, 2 remaining. Magazine empty. 7 rounds plus the 4 and 3. 14 total. Math checked. Kowalski dropped below rim again. 3rd magazine change. Same procedure. Release. Drop, reach, pull, seat, slap, charge, ready. 3.4 seconds. Slightly slower than 2nd change. Hands getting cold. Adrenaline wearing off. Fatigue setting in. Still fast enough. Still effective. Rose to engage remaining Germans. But they were already moving. Not toward American positions. Away. Full retreat. running deeper into forest, breaking contact. Assault failed. They'd had 12 men, lost 10. Couldn't continue, had to withdraw. Kowalski tracked them through his sights. Could have fired, could have killed them both, but let them run. No tactical value in pursuing, no point wasting ammunition on retreating enemies. Let them go. Let them tell other Germans what happened. Let them spread word that American positions were too dangerous to assault. Psychological warfare. Sometimes survivors were more valuable than corpses. Survivors talked. Survivors warned others. Survivors created fear. Dead men just created statistics. Kowalski ceased fire. Third magazine still had 17 rounds. Hadn't needed them. Engagement over. He stayed in firing position. Watched forest. Watched for additional Germans. Watched for counterattack. Nothing came. Just fog and silence and 10 German bodies scattered through trees at ranges from 70 to 120 yards. 0644 hours. Engagement duration, 92 seconds. Felt longer. Always did. Time distorted under combat stress. But Kowalski's watch confirmed it. 1 minute, 32 seconds from first shot to last. His squad maintained positions. Nobody moved. Nobody celebrated. Professional soldiers. New engagement could restart any moment. New Germans might send reinforcements. Stayed alert. Stayed ready. But Kowalski knew it was over. Knew from German behavior. They'd broken contact completely. Weren't regrouping. Weren't preparing second assault. They were running. Getting away from American position as fast as possible. Getting away from the bear that fired too fast. He conducted weapon check. Modified Bayar functioned perfectly. 0 malfunctions, 0 stoppages. Fired 56 rounds without issue. 3 magazines, multiple sustained bursts. Weapon cycled smoothly throughout. Bolt carriers showed no damage. Gas system functioned normally. Barrel was warm, not hot, not critical. Within acceptable temperature range. The modification worked. Increased cyclic rate by 200 rounds per minute. 40% more firepower. Changed tactical equation completely. Germans couldn't advance under that volume of fire. Couldn't close distance before taking catastrophic casualties. Assault broken in 92 seconds. Blake's words came back. Gun's too goddamn slow. Not anymore. Not this gun. This gun was fast enough to stop 12 Germans, fast enough to save 8 American lives, fast enough to prove 22 minutes of unauthorized work meant something. Kowalski heard movement behind him. Turned. Private First Class Ortiz approached, stayed low, used cover, reached Kowalski's foxhole, looked at the bar, looked at Kowalski, spoke quietly. "Sarge, your weapon sounds different." Kowalski said nothing. Waited. Ortiz continued. "Faster. Fires faster than standard bar. Way faster." Still Kowalski stayed silent. Ortiz pressed. "What did you do to it?" Kowalski met his eyes. Considered response. Decided on truth. "Made it better." "How much better?" 200 rounds per minute better. Ortiz processed that. Did math. Understood implications. "That's 40% more firepower." "Yes. That's why they broke. Why they couldn't advance. Too much incoming fire." "Yes." Ortiz looked at German bodies visible through fog. Counted them. 10 visible from this position. 2 more somewhere in the trees. 12 Germans. You stopped all of them. With 1 BAR. Squad helped. You got 1 with your Garand. 1, you got 10 in 90 seconds. Ortiz paused. Standard bar couldn't do that. No. What you did to your weapon, is it legal? Kowalski looked at him steadily. No. Court-martial if they find out? Yes. How much time? 5 years military prison. Dishonorable discharge. Ortiz absorbed that. Looked at BAR again, looked at German bodies, looked back at Kowalski. Does it matter? Legal or illegal? Depends on your perspective. From my perspective, I'm alive. We're all alive. Because your BER fired fast enough to stop them before they reached us. So from where I'm standing, legal doesn't matter. Alive matters. Kowalski nodded. That's why I did it? Can you do it to other BARs? Other gunners' weapons? Technically, yes. Takes about 20 minutes. But every modification is another court-martial charge if discovered. Another weapon that's unauthorized. Another soldier at risk of prison. Ortiz considered. If you don't do it, other BR gunners keep dying. Keep getting overrun because their weapons fire too slow. That acceptable to you? No. Then seems like easy choice. Show us how. We'll take the risk. It's not your risk to take. The hell it isn't. I'm carrying a Garand that fires 8 rounds before reloading. You're carrying a bar that fires 20. If your BR goes down, I'm next in line for automatic weapon, which means I need to know how to make it faster. Need to know how to survive. Kowalski saw the logic. Saw Ortiz was right. Modification couldn't stay secret. Too obvious. Too effective. Other soldiers would notice. Would want same advantage. Would demand to know how. He could refuse. Could protect himself. Could avoid additional charges. Could let other gunners die with standard weapons while his stayed modified. Or he could teach them. Could spread the modification. Could give entire battalion the firepower to survive close-range assaults. Could save dozens of lives. Hundreds, maybe. The choice was obvious. Same choice he'd made 4 nights ago. Same choice Blake's death had forced. Regulations versus survival. Career versus lives. Following orders versus doing what worked. Tonight, Kowalski said. 2,200 hours. Bring your squad's bar gunner. I'll show you both. But you understand the risk. This spreads beyond us. Command will investigate. We'll find the modifications. We'll court-martial everyone involved. Understood. Worth it. You sure? Ortiz looked at German bodies again. Looked at American positions where his friends were alive. Looked at Kowalski. Blake died because his weapon fired too slow. Morrison died same way. Chen died same way. 62 men dead in 3 weeks because their BARs couldn't fire fast enough. Yeah, I'm sure. Show me how to fix it. Kowalski nodded. The modification was about to spread. No stopping it now. Within days, maybe weeks, dozens of BARs would be modified. Dozens of soldiers would carry unauthorized weapons. Command would eventually notice. Investigation would follow. But dozens of soldiers would also stay alive. Would survive German assaults. Would come home after the war. And that mattered more than Kowalski's career. More than regulations. More than anything except winning and surviving. Morning light increased. Fog began burning off. Visibility improved to 80 yards. Kowalski could see all 10 German bodies now. Young men. Early 20s mostly. Dead in Hürtgen Forest because they'd attacked Americans with a modified bar. Dead because one sergeant had ignored regulations, had removed a rate reducer, had increased his weapon's cyclic rate by 40%, had changed the tactical equation in 92 seconds. The illegal trigger job worked. Question now was how many other soldiers would benefit before command shut it down. November 12th, 0900 hours, 3 hours after the engagement. Kowalski's squad remained in defensive positions. Standard procedure after contact. Germans might counterattack, might send reinforcements, might probe American strength. Squad stayed alert, stayed ready, watched the tree line. But word of the engagement spread through the battalion, faster than German counterattack. Radio communication to company headquarters. Contact report filed by Lieutenant James Parker. 12 enemy engaged at 0642 hours. 10 killed. 2 retreated. 0 friendly casualties. Engagement duration, 92 seconds. American automatic weapon fire decisive factor. Captain William Morrison read the report at 0915, 28 years old. West Point graduate, company commander for 6 months. He'd lost 43 men since October. Read too many casualty reports, attended too many memorial services, wrote too many letters to families. This report was different. 12 Germans engaged at close range. Standard situation that usually resulted in American casualties, sometimes heavy casualties. But this time, 0 friendly losses. 10 enemy killed. Assault broken in 90 seconds. Morrison noted the statistics, noted the unusual effectiveness, requested detailed after-action report. Lieutenant Parker arrived at Kowalski's position at 1000 hours. 24 years old. Princeton. Infantry officer for 8 months. Competent, professional. Knew his job, knew his men. Respected Kowalski despite rank difference. Combat experience earned respect faster than rank insignia. Parker inspected German bodies, counted hits. 7 bodies showed multiple impacts. Tight shot groups, center mass, professional marksmanship. 3 bodies showed single hits, clean kills, efficient. 2 bodies were beyond American perimeter, killed during retreat. Parker noted positions, noted ranges, reconstructed engagement mentally. He returned to Kowalski's position, examined the foxhole, noted firing angles, noted fields of fire, noted German approach routes, standard tactical analysis. But something felt different. Engagement was too one-sided, too efficient. 12 Germans should have caused casualties, should have reached American positions, should have forced close-quarters fighting. Parker examined Kowalski's bar. External inspection only. Weapon looked completely standard. M1918A2, 20-inch barrel, walnut stock, bipod, standard configuration. Nothing visible suggested modification. But Parker had served with infantry for 8 months. Had heard BARs fire hundreds of times, knew the weapon's sound, knew its rhythm. He'd heard Kowalski's bar during the engagement, heard it from company headquarters 400 yards away. Sound carried through forest. The weapon had sounded different, faster, more aggressive, higher cyclic rate than standard BR. Parker spoke carefully. Good shooting, Sergeant. 10 confirmed kills, exceptional marksmanship. Kowalski said nothing, waited. Parker continued. Engagement report says you fired 56 rounds, 3 magazines, 92 seconds duration. Yes, sir. That's approximately 36 rounds per minute sustained rate. If you say so, sir. Higher than normal BR employment rate. Kowalski met his eyes. Combat was intense, sir. Germans were close, required sustained fire. Parker nodded slowly. Technical truth. Aggressive fire discipline could explain high expenditure rate. But Parker examined the barrel, noted heat discoloration, more than 56 rounds typically produced. Suggested either more rounds fired than reported or higher cyclic rate generating more heat per round. Parker made decision. Didn't press further. Results spoke clearly. 0 friendly casualties. Mission success. Whatever had happened, it worked. Sometimes officers needed to not ask questions, needed to accept results without examining methods too closely, especially when methods saved lives. Good work, Sergeant. Keep your squad ready. Germans might probe again. Yes, sir. Parker left. But he'd seen enough. Suspected modification. Suspected unauthorized trigger work. Chose not to investigate. Chose to protect Kowalski. Chose mission success over regulation enforcement. Word continued spreading. By noon, every squad in 1st Battalion knew about the engagement. 12 Germans stopped by 1 BR. 10 killed in 90 seconds. Stories spread through infantry units faster than official communications. Soldiers talked, compared notes, shared information. By 1400 hours, 4 bar gunners from other squads approached Kowalski, asked about the engagement, asked about his weapon, asked what made it so effective. Kowalski deflected questions, provided tactical explanations, good firing position, clear fields of fire, German mistakes, standard infantry analysis. But BAR gunners knew better. They carried the same weapon, knew its capabilities, knew its limitations, knew standard BR couldn't achieve Kowalski's results. Something had changed, something mechanical, something that increased effectiveness 40%. They wanted the same change, wanted the advantage Kowalski had created, wanted weapons that fired fast enough to stop German assaults, wanted to survive. Private First Class Martinez was, first, 22 years old, San Antonio, bar gunner for 5 months. Lost his previous gunner to German assault 2 weeks earlier. Man named Rodriguez. Good soldier, good friend. Killed because his bar couldn't fire fast enough. Martinez didn't want to die the same way. Sergeant, I need to know what you did to your weapon. Kowalski looked at him, saw determination, saw fear, saw same calculation he'd made 4 nights ago. Regulations versus survival. Can't help you, Martinez. Can't or won't. Both. What you're asking about doesn't exist officially. But unofficially? Kowalski paused, considered. Martinez was serious, understood risks, deserved honest answer. Unofficially, modifications are possible. Increase cyclic rate, improve combat effectiveness, but also violate regulations. Court-martial offense. 5 years prison. Rodriguez is dead. Died 3 days ago. Germans got within 20 feet before his bar stopped them. Wasn't fast enough. He needed what you have. I need what you have. Court-martial is future problem. Germans are current problem. Logic was sound. Same logic Kowalski had used. Same choice. Same calculation. Martinez was right. Immediate survival mattered more than potential punishment. Tonight, 2200 hours. Abandoned German bunker 200 yards northwest. Bring your bar. Tell nobody. Martinez nodded, left. Told 3 other BR gunners. They told others. By evening, Kowalski faced decision. Limit training to small group or expand to everyone who wanted it. Small group meant containment. Fewer modified weapons, less chance of discovery, but also fewer soldiers protected. More men dying with standard weapons. Large group meant widespread modifications, better protection for entire battalion, but also guaranteed discovery. Command would notice, would investigate, would prosecute. Kowalski chose large group. Made same choice he'd made repeatedly. Lives over careers. Effectiveness over regulations. Survival over doctrine. November 14th, 2200 hours. Abandoned German bunker. Concrete structure. Partially collapsed. Hidden from American command positions. 6 BR gunners attended. Martinez, Ortiz, Corporal James Wilson, Private Robert Chen, Private First Class David Murphy, Sergeant Thomas Bailey. All experienced, all combat veterans. All had watched friends die in close-range German assaults. All wanted weapons that worked better than standard issue. Kowalski demonstrated procedure. Laid his bar on makeshift table, field stripped it, showed trigger group, showed rate reducer mechanism, explained function, explained how it slowed cyclic rate, explained how removing it increased firepower. Step 1. Field strip weapon. Standard procedure. You've done this hundreds of times. 6 gunners nodded. Pulled their BARs, began field stripping. Smooth movements, muscle memory, weapons apart in 30 seconds. Step 2. Access trigger group. Remove pins, separate group from receiver. Followed. Careful work. Cold weather made fingers clumsy, but all succeeded. 6 trigger groups exposed. Step 3. Remove rate reducer. Bend retaining tabs. Disconnect cam linkage. Extract mechanism. This took longer. Tabs were stubborn. Required force. Required improvised tools. Bayonets as pry bars. Cleaning rods as punches. But all 6 gunners succeeded. 6 rate reducers removed. 6 weapons now capable of 750 rounds per minute. Step 4. Modify trigger linkage. Create bypass. Direct a connection between trigger and sear. Kowalski distributed wire. Showed technique. Supervised work. Corrected errors. Ensured proper connections. This was critical. Bad connection meant weapon wouldn't fire. Or worse, would fire uncontrollably. Had to be done correctly. All 6 completed modifications. All trigger groups showed proper connections. Step 5. Reassemble. Standard procedure in reverse. 6 weapons reassembled. All looked standard externally. Nothing visible suggested modification. Step 6. Function test. Dry fire. Check trigger pull. Check sear engagement. Each gunner tested their weapon. Pulled triggers. Heard clean sear releases. Everything functioning properly. Kowalski addressed group. Modified weapons fire 200 rounds per minute faster. 40% more firepower. But also considerations. Weapons overheat faster. Barrels get hot quicker. Need more frequent cooling breaks. Ammunition consumption increases. Need disciplined fire control. Can't just hold trigger and empty magazine. Still need aimed fire. Still need fire discipline. He paused. Let them absorb information. Also understand consequences. These modifications are unauthorized. Completely illegal. If discovered, we all face court-martial. All of us. Me for teaching. You for implementing. Command will show no mercy. This is serious violation. Bailey spoke. 30 years old. Detroit. Most experienced gunner present. Sergeant, I've been carrying bar for 2 years. Know the weapon inside and out. Know its limitations. Know men who died because weapon fired too slow. If this modification works, if it saves lives, I'll take court-martial risk. Rather be alive in prison than dead following regulations. Others agreed. Same sentiment, same calculation. Survival mattered more than regulations. Kowalski nodded. Then spread the word carefully. Other gunners who want training, send them to me. But operational security critical. Don't tell officers. Don't tell anyone who doesn't need to know. Modified weapons stay quiet until combat. Then we show Germans what improved BARs can do. Training continued. November 15th, 4 more gunners. November 16th, 8 more. November 18th, 12 more. By November 20th, 32 BR gunners in 28th Infantry Division carried modified weapons. 32 unauthorized rate reducer removals. 32 improved automatic weapons. 32 potential courts-martial, but also 32 better chances of survival. 32 weapons firing 750 rounds per minute. 32 bars that could stop German assaults before they reached American positions. The illegal modifications spread through 1st Battalion like infection. Couldn't be stopped. Wouldn't be stopped. Soldiers wanted to survive, wanted weapons that worked, wanted advantages that kept them alive. Command remained officially ignorant. Captain Morrison suspected. Lieutenant Parker knew. Battalion armorer Sergeant Chen definitely knew. But nobody investigated. Nobody conducted detailed inspections. Nobody asked questions they didn't want answered. Because casualty rates were dropping. German assault success rates were falling. American defensive positions were holding. Whatever was happening in the field, it was working. Sometimes officers needed to not look too closely.